because I'm back.
The sport of MMA, especially in the Western market with promotions such as the UFC, Bellator, and the PFL, is a very fast business. The fans seem to have quick memories as almost every weekend there seems to be cards featuring at least 10 fighters, meaning at least 20 new faces every single weekend. New fighters debut all the time. It's a lot of moving parts, and if you add in new fans, the collective MMA fan base's memory is incredibly short, especially for fighters that might not have quite as much hype around them in the first place, or that are native English speakers. Santiago Ponzinibbio, unfortunately, is one of those fighters that, aside from hardcore fans, has moved out of the minds of many thanks to his inactivity. And unfortunately, Santiago's bad luck and injuries, that I will go into detail on in just a second, have plagued his entire UFC career, as I believe he has all the tools in his arsenal and is one of the most well-rounded martial artists on the roster. Ponzinibbio's original background is in kickboxing, as he picked it up at the age of 13, but he is also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Ponzinibbio spent most of his time as a pro before the UFC from 2008 to 2012 on the regional scene in South America, more specifically small promotions in his native country of Argentina and Brazil, amassing an impressive record of 17-1 before getting a shot on The Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 2. Ponzinibbio has a great lower leg kick that he often uses to keep his opponents off balance. It has very little wind-up, and he often aims very low on the leg. It can almost act as a sweep. It's definitely one of his best weapons. Santiago has a great jab, and he uses it often in all of his fights, another one of his best weapons. Santiago throws nice long strikes, fully extending his shoulders and keeping his opponents on the end of his punches so that he can keep good distance. Ponzinibbio is really great at maximizing his reach. Ponzinibbio is also very aggressive and not afraid to take a shot in order to land one of his own. Santiago often backs his opponents to the quote-unquote danger zone, or space behind the black line of the octagon. From here, there's limited ability for his opponent to evade big shots, get away from the clinch, or avoid a takedown attempt. Ponzinibbio also uses good movement and is good at angling and cutting off the cage against his opponents, as he often uses extreme pressure. A good quote from the man himself to describe his fight style is,
"I am real warrior. I fight with everything, I put my head in all my fights. I put everything. The people see that."
So Ponzinibbio's first taste of the big leagues came with an opportunity on Season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil in 2013. I often find that fighters that have competed on The Ultimate Fighter before coming to the UFC, especially the ones that have done well on the show, have made pretty strong impressions in the UFC. It's something that certainly doesn't always hold true. TUF 9 winner James Wilkes, TUF 4 winner Travis Luter, and Season 12 winner Jonathan Brookins will tell you, but generally it's a pretty good indication. Though Santiago won all 4 of his fights while on TUF, due to the fact that he broke his hand in the final bout against Leonardo Santos, he was unable to compete in the final. To add insult to injury, the opponent that he beat in a unanimous decision bout in the semifinals, Leonardo Santos, and injured himself on, got to move on to the finals and ultimately won the entire season. After making it to the UFC, Ponzinibbio experienced more injuries and a 2-2 start with the promotion. But after that, Ponzinibbio finally began to catch his stride. The 7-fight win streak that followed featured impressive displays of striking against increasingly more challenging competition. Ponzinibbio faced then 9-1 Andreas Stahl in late 2015 and stopped him in the very first round using his signature style of extreme pressure, first pressuring his opponent to the danger zone part of the octagon before firing off a quick 1-2 that folded Stahl, sending him crashing against the cage. In April of 2016, in a very similar performance, Ponzinibbio dispatched then 17-4 TUF winner Court McGee in the very first round, utilizing thudding leg kicks, stuffing takedown attempts, and finally identifying a pattern within his opponent's clinch game in order to put him away. Less than 4 months later, Santiago won a unanimous decision bout over the 19-4 fighter Zach Cummings, and in February of 2017, Santiago took on 12-3 fighter Nordine Taleb and won another unanimous decision bout. This is when there was another noticeable step up in competition for Ponzinibbio, as he headlined a card against then 16-2-1 fighter Gunnar Nelson in July of 2017. Ponzinibbio was nearly a 2-1 underdog in this fight, but obviously someone forgot to tell him that as he smashed Gunnar Nelson in just 82 seconds, knocking him out in spectacular fashion and earning himself a Performance of the Night bonus. At this point, Ponzinibbio was ranked number 10 in the welterweight division, and in his next fight at the end of the year, he faced then 11-1 fighter and fan favorite Mike Perry in an absolute barn burner of a fight. Ponzinibbio walked away with a unanimous decision win and the respect of many fans. Santiago's striking experience was on full display, as well as his good movement and footwork. About a month before his next scheduled fight on a card in South America that Ponzinibbio was supposed to headline, a pesky hand injury again robbed Ponzinibbio out of even getting a chance to have his moment with then 12-1 fighter Kamaru Usman. And just like in his tough days, it seemed like another opportunity that he had earned was being ripped away from him. In Ponzinibbio's last fight in late 2018, he took on the menace of the welterweight division, Neil Magny. Neil Magny is such a challenge for any fighter, no matter the ranking, thanks to his physical attributes, and I'm mostly talking about his 80-inch reach, which is just nuts for a 170-pound man. But Magny also has a clinch and grappling style that's not only frustrating and taxing on the cardio, but makes it seemingly impossible for his opponents to ever gain the upper hand. Ponzinibbio earned the opportunity to headline the UFC's first ever card in his home country of Argentina. Ponzinibbio not only out-jabbed Neil Magny, but he absolutely destroyed his leg with super clean leg kicks before delivering a face-first KO in the 4th round to the delight of his elated home crowd. I mean, just listen. Sheesh. Talk about a special moment, and the showing landed him a Performance of the Night bonus and immediately put Santiago on the map for fighters fast rising towards a title shot. With the win, Ponzinibbio captured the number 7 spot in the UFC's welterweight rank. About 2 weeks later, his former would-be opponent Kamaru Usman defeated Rafael dos Anjos, setting up his title shot against then champion Tyron Woodley, and about the next year they'd go on to win to become the welterweight champion. So essentially, with their canceled bout less than a year prior, it wouldn't have been a stretch to assume that Ponzinibbio would have been at the very least in the conversation for the first title defense for the new champion, if not for his extremely bad string of injuries and bad luck following the Magny fight. Alright, so now that we have set the stage as to just how tragic this absence has been, as it's pretty much directly cost him a title shot opportunity and his ranking. So where exactly has Santiago Ponzinibbio been for the last 2 years? Most fans might have heard of a staph infection, but obviously the situation got a little worse than that for Argentina native. In an interview with MMA Junkie, Ponzinibbio details how he contracted 2 bacterial infections in the beginning of 2019, following the fight with Magny, that as a result sent him to the hospital for 8 days, with especially a lot of swelling in his knee. After being discharged, Ponzinibbio began to lose weight and came down with an 103-degree fever and decided to return to the hospital. After an evaluation, it was discovered that the medication given to Santiago had actually eliminated his white blood cells, which are responsible for the body's defense from infection, as well as losing about 30 pounds. After being quarantined in a sterile room to be evaluated by doctors, Ponzinibbio's condition improved, and after 8 to 10 days, he was sent home and had to continue taking his meds through a PPC, or peripheral inserted central catheter, which is inserted through the arm and goes to the chest to distribute medication. Fun, with nurses monitoring him in his home, at least 5 different types of medication. When all this was said and done, it had taken about 3 months in total. So the PPC comes off, lots of oral medication for about a month and a half, and then approximately another 4.5 months pass, and Santiago gets cleared by the doctor to start physical therapy training. After being cleared, Santiago flew to the UFC's Performance Institute in Las Vegas and trained vigorously twice a day for weeks. Ponzinibbio was seeing absolutely no physical progress at this point, and in order to function, Santiago said that he needed an excess amount of anti-inflammatory medication, and Santiago had a quote-unquote crazy amount of swelling the single day he didn't take the anti-inflammatory medication before the staff at the USCPI recommended his return to the doctor for an MRI. Oh yeah, and this part of the timeline all took place in November of 2019, by the way, when Ponzinibbio was still slated to take on Robbie Lawler at UFC 245 on December 14th, a card in which welterweight champion Kamaru Usman was also defending his belt against Kobe Covington. An MRI revealed an infection in Ponzinibbio's bone that was very dangerous and could potentially cause him to never be able to fight again. After a second opinion in Florida, it was revealed that the issues were actually misdiagnosed. It seems the swelling had obstructed the initial diagnosis, which for anyone who has ever had a major injury knows that that is a very, very common thing. Ponzinibbio's knee was actually suffering from extreme untreated arthritis, and with a lot of specific protocols from a specialist, Ponzinibbio was slowly able to improve. After a couple weeks of treatment, Ponzinibbio's body finally began to get better. At this point, Santiago started to do PT and actually began to see the results. But by now it was 2020. Now folks might be saying, well yeah, that's 2019, but now it's 2021. Well yes, Happy New Year. We made it through 2020, but no. And for anyone that's ever had a serious infection or a really bad stint where your body can't recover, you need real time to build back up. I mean, at one time, this man had lost well over 30 pounds, with doctors wanting him to call it a career, and he was struggling to even move around. It takes time to build back up from that, even for a professional. No, especially for a professional. I think this clip from Ponzinibbio's interview in July of 2020 perfectly sums up just how fast things change for him.
Happens. They told me, you do one more fight and you go for the belt, you know, that's my dream. I come in working so hard for a lot of years. I'm so excited, and a couple weeks after, I am fighting for my life in the hospital, you know, very ups and downs, you know, very, very crazy time, you know, very crazy time. The doctor told me it's one thing, you know, a lot of complications in the process, you know. They told me, no, more 3 weeks and you're good, more 4 weeks and you're good, more 4 weeks and you're good. And when I will see the pace all 2019, very, very, very tough.
So abrupt and obviously extremely challenging for Ponzinibbio, especially after all the hard work and adversity he has faced in his career. Santiago also details how the ordeal seemed to drag on, even when doctors were telling him it was going to be okay and he was going to be back just the next week. And not even being able to let the fans know really seems to have bothered Ponzinibbio, because he never knew when he was going to be ready. After being inactive for so long, the UFC removed him from the welterweight rankings. Fighters like Leon Edwards, who were behind Ponzinibbio, were now in front of him, which is a very demoralizing situation. In July of 2020, when Santiago did most of his most recent media, he was shooting for a October or November 2020 return to the Octagon. But Ponzinibbio was further delayed when he unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19 later that month in July, further delaying his return to the Octagon as he had to stay out of the gym and recover. And voila, a full timeline of Ponzinibbio's absence as he lands on the main card for the first UFC card of 2021. I feel Ponzinibbio's showing on TUF was almost exactly how his UFC career has played out so far. Ponzinibbio was the best fighter on the show, winning KO of the season for his TKO of Marcio Santos in the preliminary round of the tournament, as well as winning the fight of the season honors for his semifinals bout against the aforementioned Leonardo Santos. However, Ponzinibbio might have gotten money from the bonuses for his performances and praise, but thanks to the injuries sustained in the fight itself, the opportunity to even compete for the TUF final was ripped away from him. An incredibly bittersweet result. I assume even though the extra 100k was nice, that's not the reason why Ponzinibbio was competing in the tournament in the first place. Obviously it was to win it, he's a competitor. And his time on TUF has actually seemed to provide perfect foreshadowing for his UFC career thus far. After a mediocre start with the promotion at 2-2 and a couple of cancelled fights due to injuries, he finally hits his stride, rattling off impressive win after impressive win. But another untimely hand injury before a bout with soon-to-be welterweight champion Kamaru Usman after a 6-fight win streak again slows him. After another great performance, and the first in his home country of Argentina, in his last fight, again, Ponzinibbio is held back by things he can't control for 790 straight days if he is hopefully able to step in the Octagon on January 16th. Currently, Ponzinibbio is slated to return against Jingliang Li. This came after an opponent change when Muslim Salikov had to pull out of the bout due to ongoing COVID-19 symptoms. It will be his first time competing in the UFC in well over 2 years. Ponzinibbio is now 34 years old. Ponzinibbio is a very special martial artist and an even more special human being. To even return after such a long time battling with something like this and a joint as important as the knee, especially when his fight style relies so much on movement and his kicks. If his opponent Jing Liang, the Leech, remains unchanged, then fans can surely expect fireworks on the feet. Ponzinibbio's arsenal of long fluid striking will surely be on full display, as fans can expect to see a fighter's fighter that's not afraid to take a shot. or look for a swarming finish that some other fighters might be shy to pull the trigger on. Welcome back, Santiago Ponzinibbio. We missed you. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, I'd like to take the time to thank you so much for the support. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it and want to see more. This was a fun one to make. A special shout out to Farah Hannoun of MMA Junkie and Luke his grandsire for their interviews of Santiago Ponzinibbio in July of 2020. See the description for links to those interviews as well as other important references. Important note, this timeline is an approximation. Because Ponzinibbio was recalling his injury history on the spot for those interviews, some dates and time ranges change from interview to interview, so any inaccuracies for this timeline can be attributed to that fact. Drop a comment and let me know what content you want to see next on the channel. Big things to come in 2021. Stay tuned and have a good one.